Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the glamorous, scandalous, and ever-shifting world of Los Angeles fashion. Today is a fantastic day to unpack the latest explosive drama that is tearing families apart and redefining corporate loyalties. Grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's get right into the heart of the chaos unfolding on our screens. The legacy of Forrester Creations has always been built on a foundation of fierce family loyalty, unparalleled artistic vision, and a ruthless desire to dominate the global fashion industry. For decades, the towering glass walls of the Forrester building have served as both a sanctuary for creative genius and a brutal battlefield for bitter, blood-soaked rivalries. The younger generation, born into this world of velvet and venom, has always carried the suffocating weight of expectations on their shoulders. They are expected to fall in line, to sacrifice their own desires for the good of the corporate empire, and to unconditionally worship the patriarchs who sit on the executive thrones. But what happens when the pressure becomes too much? What happens when a loyal soldier realizes that his devotion is being rewarded with nothing but silence and profound disrespect? The answer is a rebellion so profound, so devastating, that it threatens to tear the very fabric of the Forrester legacy to absolute shreds. For months, R.J. Forrester had played the role of the dutiful son and the protective grandson. When the violent feud between the Spencer and Forrester families reached a terrifying climax at the Bikini Bar, R.J. was the one who stood his ground. When Will Spencer's reckless rage resulted in a devastating physical blow to Eric Forrester's face, R.J. positioned himself as the ultimate defender of the Forrester name. He helped bring his battered grandfather home. He stood by his family during the ensuing public relations nightmare. And he believed that his unwavering loyalty had finally cemented his place as a respected leader within the company. R.J. thought he had proven his worth, not just as a member of the family, but as a talented visionary who deserved a seat at the adult table. He foolishly believed that his father, Ridge Forrester, would finally look at him with the same admiration and respect that he so freely handed out to others. However, the fragile illusion of R.J.'s hard-earned status was completely shattered the moment Thomas Forrester returned to Los Angeles. The rumors of Thomas's impending arrival had been swirling through the corridors of Forrester Creations like a dark, ominous storm cloud, but the reality of his return was far more destructive than anyone could have anticipated. Thomas did not just step off a plane and quietly resume his duties. He marched into the executive offices like a conquering emperor returning to reclaim his stolen kingdom. Empowered by Ridge's desperate need to stabilize the company in the wake of Logan Spencer's shocking defection to Logan Creations, Thomas was immediately handed the keys to the kingdom. He was given absolute, unchecked authority over the design teams, and he wasted no time in transforming the collaborative environment of Forrester Creations into a suffocating, ruthless dictatorship. Exhausted by Thomas's relentless dictatorship, R.J. found himself being systematically erased from the company's future. Thomas dismissed R.J.'s innovative concepts with a wave of his hand, belittled his modern aesthetic in front of the entire staff, and treated his younger brother like an incompetent intern who was only there because of his last name. Every sketch R.J. submitted was either heavily altered to fit Thomas's rigid vision or thrown into the trash entirely. The creative suppression was agonizing, but what hurt R.J. the most was the deafening silence from their father. R.J. turned to Ridge for support, desperately hoping that the patriarch would intervene and champion the son who had stayed loyal during the company's darkest hours. Instead, Ridge turned a blind eye to Thomas's tyrannical behavior. Blinded by his own desperation to save the company's public image and overly reliant on Thomas's proven track record, Ridge completely alienated R.J., explicitly siding with Thomas's ruthless methods and telling R.J. to simply follow his older brother's lead. The psychological toll of this blatant alienation pushed R.J. to his absolute breaking point. The profound realization that Ridge's love, professional respect, and validation were entirely conditional was a bitter pill to swallow. The facade of the golden, happy family crumbled into dust, leaving behind a young man burning with deep-seated resentment and a desperate, agonizing need for validation. RJ realized that blood loyalty at Forrester Creations was a one-way street, a toxic trap designed to keep him subservient while Thomas basked in the glory. He could no longer endure the daily humiliation of working under a brother who viewed him as a threat to be neutralized rather than a partner to be embraced. The suffocating atmosphere of the Forrester building became a prison, and RJ knew that if he stayed, his creative spirit would be permanently extinguished under the crushing weight of Thomas's massive ego. As RJ's desperation reached a fever pitch, an unthinkable idea began to take root in his mind. Across the city, a new fashion empire was rising from the ashes of family betrayal. Logan Creations, spearheaded by the brilliant and strategic Katie Logan, was thriving. Hope Logan Spencer had already made the shocking decision to defect, launching her wildly successful Hope Buy Logan line and proving that there was life and immense success outside the walls of Forrester Creations. Furthermore, RJ's mother, Brooke Logan Forrester, had been violently alienated by the Forrester patriarchs and had firmly aligned herself with her sisters and her daughter. RJ looked across the enemy lines and saw a sanctuary. He realized that his true family might not be the Forresters who constantly dismissed and belittled him, but the Logans who would embrace his talent, nurture his vision, and give him the creative autonomy he so desperately craved. Making the decision to commit corporate treason was not easy, but RJ knew that he could not just walk into Logan Creations empty-handed. He needed to make a statement, a grand gesture that would instantly legitimize his arrival and deal a devastating, crippling blow to Thomas's dictatorship. He needed a weapon of mass destruction in the form of fashion. Late one evening, while the Forrester building was silent and empty, RJ crept through the shadowy halls toward Eric Forrester's private, highly secured design studio. His heart hammered against his ribs as he bypassed the security protocols, fully aware of the monumental betrayal he was about to commit. He was no longer the dutiful grandson. He was a rebel crossing the Rubicon, preparing to burn his bridges in the most spectacular way possible. Inside the dimly lit sanctuary, RJ systematically searched through Eric's private archives. He was looking for the holy grail of Forrester design, and he found it locked inside a vintage leather portfolio. These were Eric Forrester's most secret, unreleased haute couture sketches, the brilliant, foundational concepts that the patriarch had poured his soul into but had never shown to the public. As RJ traced the elegant lines of the sketches, a heavy wave of guilt washed over him. He remembered the bruised and battered face of his grandfather after the bikini bar incident and the fierce instinct he had felt to protect the old man. But that guilt was quickly overshadowed by the intoxicating, burning thrill of impending revenge. Eric had stood by as Ridge alienated him, and Eric had allowed Thomas to turn the company into a toxic wasteland. In RJ's mind, taking these sketches was not an act of theft. It was claiming his rightful inheritance, a necessary sacrifice to destroy Thomas's reign of terror. With the secret sketches safely concealed in his briefcase, RJ walked out of Forrester Creations for the last time, leaving behind a legacy that had only ever brought him pain. The next morning, he arrived at the sleek, modern offices of Logan Creations. The atmosphere was a stark contrast to the cold, oppressive environment he had just escaped. The air crackled with vibrant energy, collaboration, and mutual respect. When RJ walked into Katie Logan's executive office, he was greeted by the shocked faces of Katie, Hope, and his mother, Brooke. Without saying a word, RJ opened his briefcase and laid Eric's secret sketches across the expansive glass desk. He announced that he was officially joining Logan Creations, and he brought these masterpieces as his debut gift. a foundational weapon they could use to completely obliterate Thomas Forrester on the upcoming runway. The collective gasp in the room was deafening. Katie's strategic mind immediately went into overdrive, recognizing the unparalleled value of the stolen intellectual property. These sketches were the ultimate leverage, a guaranteed way to eclipse whatever Thomas was planning for Forrester Creations. Brooke's initial shock quickly transformed into a fierce, protective maternal pride. She had watched her son suffer under Ridge's neglect and Thomas's cruelty for too long. Seeing RJ finally stand up for himself, finally fighting back with the same ruthless cunning that the Forresters had always used against the Logans, filled Brooke with a sense of vindication. Hope, who understood the agonizing difficulty of leaving the family business, welcomed her brother with open arms. Together, they formed an unstoppable alliance, a united front determined to redefine the fashion landscape of Los Angeles. Back at Forrester Creations, the discovery of the missing sketches and RJ's sudden defection triggered an absolute volcanic eruption of rage. When Thomas realized that his younger brother had not only abandoned the company but had stolen Eric's most prized, unreleased concepts, he viewed it as the ultimate act of treason. Thomas's fury was uncontainable. He stormed through the design offices, shattering equipment and screaming about RJ's betrayal. Ridge was left in a state of stunned disbelief, unable to comprehend how the son he thought he had under control could execute such a calculated and devastating betrayal. But Thomas did not have time for shock. His mind immediately shifted to vengeance. He swore to completely destroy RJ's career, vowing to make sure his younger brother never worked in the fashion industry again. Refusing to be outmaneuvered, Thomas launched a vicious, highly calculated media smear campaign. He utilized every contact, every journalist, and every PR firm at Forrester's disposal to control the narrative. Headlines began to explode across the internet and tabloid magazines, branding RJ Forrester as a talentless hack, a fraud, and a malicious intellectual property thief. Thomas gave exclusive, emotionally manipulative interviews where he played the role of the betrayed older brother, claiming that RJ was a desperate, untalented child who had to resort to stealing their grandfather's genius because he possessed no original vision of his own. The media circus descended upon Los Angeles, with paparazzi hounding both fashion houses, turning a corporate dispute into a highly publicized, deeply ugly family war. The public relations nightmare was intense, and the pressure on Logan Creations was immense. But if Thomas thought his media attacks would break RJ into submission, he severely miscalculated. Instead of crumbling under the weight of the public humiliation, the vicious smear campaign forged RJ into a harder, more determined, and fiercely focused designer. Every article that called him a thief, every interview where Thomas mocked his abilities, only added fuel to the raging fire inside RJ's soul. He refused to be defined by his brother's toxic, fabricated narrative. He knew that the only way to silence the critics and destroy Thomas's superiority complex was to deliver a collection so breathtakingly original that it could not be denied. RJ locked himself in the design studios at Logan Creations, working day and night. He did not simply copy Eric's stolen sketches, he used them as a foundational inspiration. A raw material that he meticulously deconstructed and infused with his own youthful genius, modern aesthetic, and bold vision. He took the classic Forrester elegance and injected it with the vibrant, rebellious spirit of the Logan brand. RJ was determined to prove to the world, to Ridge, and most importantly to Thomas, that he was a master designer in his own right. He was no longer the overlooked younger brother living in the shadows. He was a creative powerhouse ready to claim his throne on his own terms. This impending runway confrontation was no longer just about business, profit margins, or corporate dominance. It had evolved into a deeply personal, emotionally charged war for identity, respect, and survival. RJ was fighting for his creative soul, determined to prove that he did not need his ruthless brother's shadow to succeed. As the date of the fashion show rapidly approached, the tension in Los Angeles reached a terrifying boiling point. The stage was set for the most explosive, high-stakes showdown in the history of the fashion industry. A battle where only one brother could emerge victorious, and the other would be left in the ruins of their shattered legacy.